What's up, everybody? This is your boy Heel Carmichael, and welcome to a second episode of Heelverse podcast. And this topic I'm going to talk about is why there's no love for new generation era. I am a big fan of pro wrestling since 1996, or should I say, March of 1996. Days removed from WrestleMania 12, when I saw Shawn Michael become the WWE champion or WWF champion, and seeing him being interviewed by Vince McMahon, and then of course, getting into it with Jerry King Lawler. And I remember this like it was yesterday, and that's what started me. Should I say that's what I fall in love with professional wrestling. From WWF, WCW, early on, New Japan, even All Japan, Lucha Libre. I mean, you name it, I watch them all. But for this particular topic, and why I talk about this, when when you're talking about any era of any professional wrestling, mostly WWE is only to one era that people fall in love in the most. It is the Attitude Era. I mean, you can look up any other podcast, wherever you see and go, even in conversation, they always fall in love with the Attitude Era. And I grew up in the Attitude Era myself, but to be honest with you, the Attitude Era is going to shock a lot of people. It was unbalanced. It was more segments. Great wrestling match, but it's more segments. You remember the segment than the wrestling match. But don't get me wrong, the Attitude Era have gave birth to a lot of things. But for me, I love Generation Era, or should I say appreciate it. Because you gotta think back. The era started back in '93 and ended in 1997. Because you gotta think about it though. When you look at that era, the new generation era, it was fresh, it was hip, it was cool. Not only the era was, very colorful like a Marvel comic book, shout to my comic book nerds out there, but it was fresh. And not only the era was so fresh, but the wrestlers and even the matches. And I would say this: the matches they put up is very high pace. It was very action driven type of match. If you look back to it, and plus you gotta think about this too. You see a lot of fresh talent who steps up. Of course, you see them in '92. Certain wrestlers make the debut, but during the new generation era, they really get their shine. Outside from the Hulkamania, should I say the shadow of Hulkamania? Thank God. A lot of people stepped up, like HBK, Bret Hart, Diesel, 123 Kid, Owen Hart, Goldust, Razor Ramon, Sid Vicious or Sid Justice, even the very young Steve Austin during the Ringmaster. And that was a long time before he becomes Stone Cold. But also the unsung heroes like Savio Vega, King Mabel, Jeff Jarrett, uh, British the Bulldog, the the Godwins, excuse me, and of course the Blue Blood, Hunter Helms Hamsley. And I never forget, I used to do that little pose where I'm, or just the little ton every time I make fun of my friends at that time. But not only that, the new generation era played a important role, but also it gave birth to the Monday Night Raw. You look back in the day in Monday Night Raw, it was a grimy, but it was a start for a lot of many things. See upset, see title defense of all the titles from WWF Championship to Intercontinental Championship and the Tag Team Championships. And you look back all those matches, like Bret Hart versus 123 Kid for the WWF Championship. Of course, the most well known, one of the most famous matches that people talked about to this day is the 123 Kid upset against Razor Ramon. Those matches you can look back. And during that same era, WCW came along, but it wasn't Um, it wasn't impactful. They was there, but it wasn't impactful until they started Monday Night Nitro when they was live and versus a taped Raw. Then of course you got the early Extreme Championship Wrestling. I think it was after the days after become Eastern Championship Wrestling or NWA Eastern Championship Wrestling, but they turned it up with become Extreme Championship Wrestling, and they would start making the noise not too long afterwards. And when you look back, you know, back in the day in the new generation era, you start appreciating. You start appreciate when it was good. When I say it was good, let's talk about the pay per views like Royal Rumble, when it was meant something. When Royal Rumble was really important. And then you look at WrestleMania. Back then, WrestleMania didn't take place in a big stadium or have a two night. It was usually in not a small arena, but a good pack arena. And hell, even the stage looks simple. If you look back, the stage looks simple, small ass screen, small tunnel. That's it. I think they stepped it up around WrestleMania. I want to say 13. I think that was the last time we seen that stage until this they start improving around the Attitude Era. SummerSlam, it was very very good. Of course, not all SummerSlam was perfect, but it was something you could look back like the worst SummerSlam, not pay per view, but event or match. It would have to be Yokozuna versus Lex Luger, where the match ended with Lex Luger winning by a countout, and you see him being celebrated like he's a world champion. But no, you just won the match. You didn't win the title; you just won by a countout. Back in the day, you could get away with that type of ending. If you try to pull that shit now, IWC will be bitching up the storm, and trust and believe they will in a heartbeat. And then between those pay per views from of course Survivor Series, we got this good pay per view in which we call In Your House. In Your House was a build up towards another big four when Big Four meant something. In Your House was really good. In Your House pay per view was really fun. All kind of crazy match when you look back. Like I remember the Caribbean strap match with Steve Austin and Sayu Vega, and I remember Shawn Michaels versus British the Bulldog for the WWF Championship, and that's what lead up towards to the King of the Ring. Uh, of course, Shawn Michaels versus Mankind, Mind Games. I think Shawn Michaels was the king of In Your House because he had a good run, even though it was the middle of the war, but it was a good run. Of course, Bret Hart versus Diesel in the steel cage match um, for the WWF Championship. We look back, the pay per view meant something, and it means something. Back in the '90s because they try to excite the fans, and during that time they going up against WCW. I mean WCW. Don't get it twisted. WCW do some crazy shit too. I just got done watching Uncensored. I think Uncensored 90, I believe in 96 or 95, where they have Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage and the and the Tower of Doom match. It was a two cage and the ring is on the bottom of it. It was wild, but they were a little bit of sports entertainment themselves. And plus you got Zeus as well, or Gangsta Z. But But the main question is why the new generation era is not getting no love. When you look back, the era, I feel like, the new generation was geared it towards to, kids. They weren't PG. I will say that they wasn't PG. They were more, how can I say it? I can't say they're family friendly. They were more, they were more, more entertainment. I don't think they were more, a little bit balanced. There was more, pro wrestling, little bit segment, but it was more colorful characters, and that's where it geared it towards to kids, toys. They tried to make some money, but they didn't sell themselves out, if that makes sense. They were mainstream, but they wasn't hitting it hard like the Attitude Era. I hope that sound right, but like I said from the beginning, when you're talking about a different era about professional wrestling, mostly if you talk about if both of you talk about WWE, you know, I feel like new generation have not gained any appreciation, no love, because if it wasn't for the new generation era, there will be no Monday Night Raw. There will be no uh fresh talent. Hell, there will be no HBK if you really think about it, because it would be still be running by Hulk Hogan. It would still be running by talent who never get their shine. And not only that, a lot of things you won't see today. It wasn't for the new generation era, and plus, of course, the Monday Night War, and plus the birth of the Attitude Era, close around 90, the end of 97, around December, if you think about it. And shit, during that time, between 96 and 97, that's where the war started between WWE and WCW. Because, like I said earlier, WWE was more comic book, but WCW was more grounded. And how WCW has some fair share of the sports entertainment. Like, think about it. NWO, that's one of the most iconic group of all time, during that time period. How do I know? Go look up an episode of the Powerpuff Girls. Yes, I'm talking about the Powerpuff Girls. It was an episodes about mutated broccoli who like terrorized the whole town. There's one big beefy kid come out rocking the NWO t-shirt. I am not making that shit up. Go look. It was an episode where the big beefy kid, come out with the NWO t-shirt. That's how popular the NWO were. And during that time period, around 97, around close to end of December, that's where you see the birth of the Attitude Era. After the Vince McMahon infamous promo, how you talk about how the time have changed and he don't want to insult the intelligence of the audience. In which that's kind of funny because during one of the most worst era of all time, the PG era, he pretty much treating us with some dumb shit. In which I will probably run that back with the era with the PG era down the road. But in '87, it was the birth of the Attitude Era. It was more, dark. It was more storytelling, more towards to the mature audience, more towards to like excuse me, more towards to college kids. Um, hell, during my time, the Attitude Era, I was in elementary school, from elementary school all the way up to junior high school, and that's how much I watched the Attitude Era. I think the Attitude Era ended around 2001. But if you think about it, during the birth of the Attitude Era, we get a lot of talent who really steps up, like from Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Undertaker, DX, The Rock, and many more talent people who stepped up, including our favorite pimp, The Godfather. And at that time period, it pretty much break through the mainstream ceiling. I mean, new generation, they tapped into the mainstream. Yeah, we seen Razor Ramon appear in a talk show, helping out the kids. Uh, we seen um, Bret Hart being the Simpson TV shows. They pretty much tapped it into the mainstream, but not break through like the Attitude Era. When you think about the Attitude Era, they are everywhere. They are in the MTV Celebrity Deathmatch. Yeah, Stone Cold Steve Austin in that show. You seen The Rock and Ken Shamrock on the show, the '70s shows. I mean, they really break through it. They own every single magazines if you look it up and watch. And compared to the new generation era and the attitude era, they different. And, and I started to realize that people looking at the new generation era a little bit different because they made a soft impact on not only the wrestling scene but society. Unlike the attitude era, what I mean is society, how pro wrestling influenced us. Like when I was a little kid, Shawn Michael was my hero. I look at the new generation era. Like I want to flex my arms like Shawn Michael. I want to do a sweet chin music to a pillow. I want to be like Shawn Michael, like kids want to be like Michael Jordan back in the '90s. That's bars. but but if you look at the Attitude Era, people doing the DX chop, telling people to suck it. You got people throwing up middle fingers. People were saying all the catchphrase from The Rock to the Godfather. That's how impact they were. How impact the Attitude Era compared to the New Generation era. Now, the other era that not too many people talked about it, but some people enjoyed it, including myself, is the ruthless aggression era. I even say this um, at the wrestling cookout. Shout out to Chris Dilworth. I even say that the ruthless aggression era was more balanced. A great segment and great wrestling matches, and I felt it hit harder with the style more than the new generation era. The, it's a big difference. But today, temperature of the pro wrestling, I felt like today era for WWE is not the same. It's really not. I see people saying it. The what was it? The depression aggression. In my version earlier, it was I'm sorry era to Cash Money era because Triple H let the lovers rub his rub his hands like Birdman every time attacks coming back. But but back to the New Generation era. I appreciate the New Generation era. I really do because I can go back and watch any of those matches or pretty much watching all the classic Monday Night Raw like it was yesterday. Because I could go back watch Bam Bam Bigelow. I could go back watching the early Goldust when Goldust was on his shit when he started kissing wrestlers in the mouth, do some crazy shit, play some mind game. I could go back and watch Smoking Guns, Bart Gunn and Billy Gunn. I can enjoy, yeah, I can enjoy Odd Man Johnson, a second favorite wrestler during that era. And yes, he's my hero too, even though he didn't get that much push. But you watch him and you treat them like a superhero. Unlike the golden era, or should I say the rock and roll era, where everything is pop, rock and roll. It was more fun compared to New Generation's more hip, and the Attitude Era is more um how can I say it? Rock star type of style. New Generation era. I know new generation, not new generation. Ruthless aggression era. It was more every single music you could think of. Then the PG era was some bubblegum bullshit. The fucking COVID era. Oof. In which I would love to go back to talk about that one in the near future of Heelverse. Just to let you guys know. But when I look back at the New Generation era, I feel like it need to be talked about. And in my most honest, excuse me, in my humble opinion about New Generation era, I feel like if you look at the history of WWE or WWF, I'm going to say that New Generation era gave birth to the Attitude Era, so the Ruthless Aggression Era can walk. What that means is New Generation should be think more. I feel like New Generation should be appreciated more because if you ask any wrestling fan, people love Shawn Michael, people love Bret Hart. That's where they really shine. Bret Hart and Shawn Michael during that time, hell, even Owen Hart, they they were the kings of the New Generation era. Hell, even Owen Hart, he was the king of it. If you think about it, the only thing I will critique is the women division. Women division was there, but it wasn't impactful. I mean, they were there. Of course, you got Elizabeth Blaze against I forgot her name, Lord. It was a long list of female wrestlers, but it wasn't it wasn't big, but they were there, but it wasn't impactful like the Ruthless Aggression era and today when women wrestling era. I can't speak on ECW women wrestlers because none of them wrestle except Beulah, who did Catfight, and Francine, same thing. But but in my own opinion, I feel like New Generation era was the best era out of them all because you could look back and watch all the classic matches, and I could run 'em down like in my own memory, in my own childhood. I could think back like Shawn Michael versus Bret Hart in Iron Man match. That's a classic match. Um, I could look back between Mankind versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley feud. That's a classic feud that people do talk about it, but don't even recognize. They probably recognize the 2000, but the 90s, Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Mankind, best feud. Of course, Canadian Stampede, that pay per view, the In Your House, best pay per view. Um, the Hart Foundation against Steve Austin. I think Vader, Casher. I think I gotta look it up. That whole match, excuse me, the whole match. That was awesome. Of course, WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart versus Steve Austin in the submission match. That really made Steve Austin, you know, get the biggest pop. And then of course, the the brawler. Oh, excuse me, bowler room brawl match. Mankind versus Undertaker in SummerSlam. They had a little bit of hardcore matches back in the days, but they were more, like I said, Marvel comic bookish. And then of course, Shawn Michaels versus Vader in SummerSlam '96. Even though what he did to Vader was fucked up, when he called Vader stupid, it was foul. But you remember those moments. Of course, the King of the Ring '96. From the tournament to the whole entire pay per view, it was classic, including Shawn Michaels versus British the Bulldog, Ahmed Johnson versus Goldust for the Intercontinental Championship, in which to this day I love the Gold Strap Intercontinental Championship. That's my favorite title. And of course, the birth of 316, Austin 316, after he defeat uh, Jake the Snake Roberts in the final. So there's so many key moments, that the new generation era gave birth, from the Click, HBK Click to Austin 316 to, of course, the birth of the DX around like '97. Without that, you wouldn't get no DX. You wouldn't get the Austin 16. You wouldn't get those moments in that new generation era. If that's the case, if that didn't happen, there wouldn't be no the Attitude Era. It would have been the new generation from 1993 to probably, I want to say 2000 or elsewhere if WCW didn't defeat them. Because if WCW would beat them, then I guess we wouldn't know. But yeah, without the Attitude Era, I think the new generation era would have run their course like we had to go through with the PG era, in which to this day is one of the worst era of all time. But um, yeah, the whole thing about the new generation era, I love it, and I wish people would look back, watch all the pay-per-views, watch Raw when it was really special back in the day, back in the days, because they have Brawl, they have Street Fight, they have I think Steel Cage match during that time, like '97, I believe. I think with Bret Hart and Sid Vicious. I mean, so many great moments, back in the days, and of course, Nation of Domination during that time. So a lot of things, you gotta look back and you gotta appreciate it and just not ignore them. If now the PG era, I don't blame you because that was the worst era. But I would definitely talk about that as well. But yeah, that's all I gotta say about the new generation era, and I would definitely dive into different era and different promotions. So I hope you guys, give some ideas. Well, that's the topic. Another episode in the books. I'm your boy Hill Carmichael. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and share. Support the show. Until then, see you guys next time. Goodbye.